Hello, and welcome to OMEA's Teacher Evaluation Committee's presentation on OTES 2.0. As many of you know, we are going to be using a new framework in Ohio for teacher evaluation. And over the summer, or actually over the spring in March, we sent out a survey asking who would like some professional development on this topic. We got a great response. And many of you said, yes, we would like to know more and we'd like to do some sessions, and summer seemed to be a good time. However, due to current circumstances, that's not going to be a reality. So we've decided we're going to try some virtual professional development. And this is our first shot at it, so if we have any technical gaffes, please just ignore them, and we'll do the very best we can. I'm Rachel Fleischaker. I teach elementary music and beginning band in the Canton City Schools. I chair the committee, and what I'd like to do is give everybody an overview. This first session is just going to be a broad, big overview of what the new framework looks like, what are some of the changes, what are things that stay the same, what will local control look like, and that sort of thing. What we'll do is I'll have each committee member introduce themselves, and then we'll just jump right in. So committee members, feel free to jump in and introduce yourself.
I'm Brett Dawson. I teach band in Vermillion.
I'm Chris Redd. I teach 5 through 12 band and music theory in the Dover City Schools.
Michelle, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Michelle Rennick, and I teach band at Northwest Local Schools in Canal Fulton, Ohio.
And I'm Margot Trinter, and I teach pre-K through 2 at Oberlin City Schools.
So we are your committee, and we've been working over the past month and a half to compile all the data that we can and present to you an overview of OTES 2.0.
This professional development is going to be divided into 4 modules. The first module is going to be an overview, as Rachel said. The second module is going to be over the administrative evaluations. The third module is going to cover the new focus on professional growth plans. And then the final module will go into what everybody's really interested in, which is the high quality student data. And all of the information that we're presenting comes directly from the Ohio Department of Education.
So looking ahead, this is what we're now calling OTES 1.0 framework. It was just called OTES before. Unless you've been living under a rock the last 5 or 6 years, you're pretty comfortable with this system, so I won't take a lot of time. You can see the old system. It's still the current system for some of us. We'll talk about that later. But teacher performance standards are 50% of your rating, and the student growth measures, and of course that came a lot from your dreaded SLOs. That's the other 50%, giving you the final summative rating. Remember those because that's going to be important: accomplished, skilled, developing, and ineffective.
And then we also had OTES 1.0 alternate framework, which was 50% administrative evaluation, 35% SLOs, and 15% alternative components such as student input. And that is averaged together for a final summative rating.
Now you can see this is the OTES 2.0 model, and it looks very different. There's no longer a pie chart. Various scores are not going to be averaged together. It is a holistic type model. And so what we're going to do is break this chart down a little bit. This didn't come out of a vacuum. The state level administrators have been talking quite a bit ever since OTES 1.0 was introduced. And after much discussion, they decided that there were some aspects of the OTES model that were working and were fine, but then there were others that needed to be looked at and revisited. So we're going to talk about some of the changes that are going to happen and also some of the things that will stay the same. What we'll do first is we'll break this model down. And just so you know, this is the approved model. It has been adopted. There have been districts throughout the state. I think there were about 18 districts who piloted this model in the 1920 school year. And they've given feedback the State Board of Education has adopted this model, and we'll talk about the timeline for implementation in a minute here. But for right now, we will break apart the model that you see in front of you.
So these should look really familiar to you. The 4 summative ratings: accomplished, skilled, developing, and ineffective. The language did not change, and you're going to see a lot of the same things underneath. Look at the bottom where it says components of the optional less frequent cycle. There's going to be some local control here, but you've got your 1 observation with your professional growth plan and your 1 conference with a discussion. You can see the components of the full evaluation cycle, which that's if you are rated developing or ineffective. Again, largely the same. Obviously, how you get there is a little bit different, but you should be pretty comfortable with these terms.
During your full cycle, there are 5 components. First being professional growth plan or improvement plan. Second being a formal holistic observation, followed by a conference with your administrator. Third, classroom walkthroughs. Fourth, formal focused observation with emphasis on focused areas. And then the 5th being a final summative conference. So basically, there are 2 observations. One is holistic, and one is more focused on your goals that you have articulated in your professional growth plan and that you've also discussed with your administrator. And then there is a final administrative meeting at the end.
And I'll just add to that, these are the 5 components that are the musts for the model. This is where the foundation of the framework begins. And I believe Brett is going to tell you about the less frequent cycle in the next slide.
I stole some of your thunder, Brett. I'm sorry.
So that's all right, Chris. Teachers who have a summative rating of skilled or accomplished in the year beforehand might be put on a less frequent evaluation cycle. That's going to be determined by your district. As Chris said, there's some local control here. But this cycle, unlike the full evaluation cycle, actually only has 3 parts. You'll work through a professional growth plan, which, as we said earlier, has a big impact on this new OTES 2.0 model. You'll have 1 observation and then 1 conference with your administrator to discuss your progress on your professional growth plan.
So that is the model in a nutshell. There are some things that stay the same. As we've mentioned, there are still 4 summative ratings. You'll have 1 of those 4 categories assigned to you after the evaluation cycle is complete. Also, there is a required professional growth plan or improvement plan. We've always had some type of professional growth plan. And what we mean by that is the place where you write out your professional goals for the year. If you get an ineffective rating, you would be put on an improvement plan. And the difference between the 2 is that with an improvement plan, it's the administrator who is guiding and directing the goals. So those are still going to be a component in the new model. They're going to be a little bit more emphasized, and I'll talk about that on the other side of the chart. You will still have evaluator observations and walkthroughs. That hasn't changed. An administrator will come in to watch you teach. Sometimes it'll be in a less formal walkthrough where they stay 5 or 10 minutes, but there will be at least 1, if not 2, maybe 3, depending on your district. There will be formal observations where they come in and they stay for a half an hour and watch you teach and check off the list of the rubric that they have. And finally, there is going to be required a final summative conference with your evaluator. And that's what right now we call the post-conference. So you will definitely sit down, at least at the end of the cycle, to talk through the entire evaluation process. That's all staying the same. What's going to change, and I think for music teachers, the first bullet point is really big. There's not going to be SLOs. Don't clap, celebrate, and pop the champagne cork yet, because even though there's no SLOs, there is still going to be required assessment. We are still going to have to collect data and show student progress. It's just going to be in a little bit different way, and it's no longer going to be 50% of your entire evaluation. It's going to be embedded within your evaluation. So you'll still use assessments, and if you like the assessment that you've been using with your SLO, then keep it. But you'll have to come up with 2 forms. The process itself, we won't have to make those charts and say, here's what my class is, here's how often I see them, here's the makeup of my class, here's my goals for the year. That process is gone, but the assessment still stays. The second bullet point is no shared attribution. And I know for a lot of music teachers, that's going to be a relief, because no longer will our evaluations be determined by reading and math scores or by subject areas outside of our direct teaching control. The third bullet point is that this is a holistic approach. Again, it's not that 50-50 divide between here's what my principal says and here's what my test scores say, and we average it together. It's going to be more of an all-inclusive, holistic look. The 2 forms of high-quality data I've talked about a little bit, and that is something that we're going to have to get used to using and getting better at terminology and at presenting. We assess all the time. That's not the issue. Music teachers are the best assessors in the world. We listen, we diagnose, we make a prescription, and we listen again. What we need to do is make sure that we're recording it and marking it down and collecting the data from it. And finally, that last bullet point, there's going to be more emphasis on professional growth plan. So the idea behind this new model is that you come up with your professional goals. It'll be locally controlled whether you have 1 goal or 2 goals or how those goals work. But the whole idea of the evaluation cycle is you make a goal, then you sit down with your evaluator at the end, and the evaluator says, oh, here's how I see that you're making the progress towards it through your teaching, and then you can add in, and here's what else I'm doing to meet my goal. But those professional growth plans are supposed to be the centerpiece of this evaluation format. We're going to move on. That's a lot of information to take in. And again, we're going to be breaking it down into more modules later to talk more about each piece. But let's talk a little bit about the timeline for implementation.
So there has been some timeline changes. Before, this was going to start this coming school year. Because of the situation that we are in, this is not having to be implemented until 2021. ODE is giving flexibility to the districts to wait a year. If you want to take a minute, go ahead, you can read that. And when Rachel is ready, she can change it.
So the important thing here is, excuse me, that contract language cannot prevent adoption. So this is coming whether we like it or not. But like Margot said, we're going to have the option to postpone to 21-22. I know there's a lot of districts out there that are already kind of ready to roll. They're going to take right off. Then there's some other ones that want to go ahead and wait and see. My district will probably be a wait and see district and see how it all shakes out, and we'll go another year. You're going to want to reach out to your local union for clarification. This is, if you're not asking the question, maybe nobody's asking the question, it's worth starting that conversation now, just so that they don't get blindsided by it. If you're already in the pilot program, there's a really good shot that you're moving straight on into the program next year. So talk to your union and talk to your administration.
And when you do that, this to the right here, what you see are some local decision points that you can look at with your local. I know for me, I already presented this to my local to make sure that we are looking at it, get ready. And some of the discussion points that we're going to talk more about is performance components, evaluation cycle, professional growth plan, and high quality student data.
So there are 5 aspects of the performance components that are under local control, whether there's going to be a self-assessment from yourself or not, whether there's going to be pre-conferences. So for some of you, that may look like you don't have any pre-conferences, whether observations are going to be announced versus unannounced. If there's a timeline for feedback that's required on each walkthrough or informal observation, and the number of times to meet with your evaluator or administrator to get feedback.
Another area where there's going to be a lot of local control is that evaluation cycle. And so, for instance, the number of focus areas that your administrator may be looking at. and you'll learn a lot about focus areas when we look at the professional growth plan. But how many of those areas are going to be evaluated is going to be up to the local district. The frequency of teachers being evaluated, if you're skilled or accomplished, you may find yourself in a situation where you are on the less frequent evaluation cycle for a year or two. However, you may be in a district, my own district, for instance, decided that no matter what your rating was, you would go through the full evaluation cycle each year. So that is up to the district how often you will be evaluated. The other thing is measuring your growth on your professional growth plan. This is going to be different, and it's going to benefit you to have a conversation with your administrator. Again, we will talk a lot about professional growth plans in a future module, but there's going to be a lot of local control over what those plans encompass and also how growth is measured on them. Other issues, such as if you're a teacher who's retiring and you declare by December 1st, right now, a lot of districts say, well, we don't need to evaluate you this year. That is a local decision. First-year teachers, beginning teachers who are in the RESA program, you may have to be evaluated under OTES 2.0 or RESA may take place. That is a local issue. So this is new, and these questions on this local decision point are very good ones to ask as your district enters into this new model.
Speaking of the professional growth plan, and this will be a huge part of one of our future modules, it's totally different. If you're anything like me, you take out last year's growth plan, maybe tweak it, maybe add something, maybe change that. It's going to look completely different. Check out that link to ODE. That would be a good one to look at and digest if you're, sitting at home and have a little bit of free time. So the local decision points, how many goals are teachers required to have on the professional growth plan? Again, get on that OTES committee and help guide that. What's your district timeline for development of that? That's really going to inform how you go through the entire OTES process. In some districts, they want it before the first day of school. In some districts, you might decide that they want to have that due November 1st. So you're going to have some local control. You might want some time to cultivate that. Again, join your OTES committee. And how will it be determined that the PGP is aligned to any district and or other school improvement plans? You're going to see linking to mission statements, vision statements, things like that. And that's important because if that's something that they're going to require, then you need to actually go back and read your district's mission statement and vision statement. So local control here for the professional growth plan. Summarize that is join your local OTES committee.
As Chris said, the big theme of this is get involved and help your district figure out what all this is going to look like, because high quality data is especially pertinent to us as music teachers. There's no longer any SLOs, so as Rachel said beforehand, we will be required to use 2 forms of high quality data in your evaluation. There will be local control over what those instruments will be and how they will be used. For instance, how will it be determined if an instrument meets the criteria for highly qualified student data? Is there going to be a committee, or is the evaluator going to do that? All of that is going to be determined by your local district. Another big one is how will the district define experts in the field? Is that going to be you? Is that going to be your whole music department? Is that going to be your evaluator? There's lots of up in the air questions about how this is going to be defined. And we'll be doing and dedicating the entire 4th module of this series to high quality student data.
So this concludes Module 1, the overview of OTES 2.0. The next 3 modules, which are Administrator, Evaluation, and OTES 2.0, Professional Growth Plan, and High Quality Student Data, will be released soon. I know you're so excited.
Thank you so much for joining us for this brief introduction. And thank you for sticking with us through our new virtual world. This may have raised more questions than it answered, because anything new, depending on who you are, what situation you're in, I know it's going to look different for a band director versus an elementary music teacher versus an orchestra string person. There's going to be lots and lots of different circumstances that we're all going to have to work through. So at this point, I can't say that we're the experts, but we sure have put a lot of time into thinking about this and gathering information. We've been in touch with ODE, we have talked to consultants, and we have really tried to be diligent about gathering as much current information as we possibly can for you. Our email addresses are on the side if you want to email one of us. This is a new virtual world, and I know I get inundated with emails, but we will certainly do our very best to get back with you as soon as possible. Another route to go, you can scan the QR code that's up in the corner, or you could copy the link at the bottom of this page and paste it. That will take you right to a Google form. And so if you do have a question, if you wouldn't mind throwing it in that form, that'll help us in two ways. First, it'll give us the opportunity to address those questions in future modules, but it'll also give us a good idea of what we still need to do and how we can help create more development. If anyone, I'm going to plug OMEA and the conference in February, end of January, February for next year. If anyone is involved in this, if your school district is adopting OTES 2.0 and you think you'd like to talk about that with other music educators, please contact me. Session proposals are due on May 31st, but if you have an idea for a session and you just want to bounce it off of me and we can talk about that, contact me. I'm happy to reach out. We want to get some good PD. We really want music education to be prepared. We know what we do, but sometimes we don't speak the same language that our evaluators speak, and sometimes they don't speak the same language we do. So this committee is trying to help bridge those two worlds so that you're being rated the way you need to be rated so that you can grow as a professional, but also so that the people around you understand what you do as a professional. So at this point, we're going to conclude the first module. I hope you join us for the others. And please feel free to stop your video at this time because I'm going to have to mess around on the screen trying to figure out how to stop this recording. Thanks so much. Take care, stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. I can't get my record button. All right, bye-bye.